On this episode of Ask Mr. Visa, we're going to talk about 5 different ways that you may be able to speed up your Australian visa processing. Stay tuned.
From Sydney, it's the Ask Mr. Visa show, where immigration lawyer Mark Northam answers your questions about migrating to Australia. All information on the Ask Mr. Visa show is for educational purposes and is not intended as legal advice. And now, from Sydney, Australia, senior immigration lawyer Mark Northam.
And welcome to the show. I'm Mark Northam. It's my pleasure to have you here. Ask Mr. Visa is a new show that we've put together to help answer commonly asked questions about Australian visas. Each show will have a different topic that we talk about. You can go back and listen to older shows to get some topics that you might have missed. And we'll also be featuring late-breaking Australian visa news as it comes. I'm an immigration lawyer here in Sydney and just want to help you understand the system as someone who's going to be applying for a visa. If you're having visa problems, I'd like to help. That's what I do. We're going to get right to our first segment. That is the top 5 ways that you may be able to speed up your visa processing. Alrighty. So these tips may work for you. Now, they may not work. They don't work for everybody. And there's no magic potion here. There's no silver bullet that will get you a visa overnight. However, in my practice over the years, I've noticed that there are some things that can, in many cases, get you some really positive results. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to show you the top 5 tips for hopefully speeding up your visa processing. First tip, contact your processing office at least once every couple of months. Now, where is your processing office? That may be difficult to find because until you get an email from them, you may not know where your visa is actually being processed. So you may have to do a little digging around. You might even call the immigration department and just ask them and see if there's a way you can communicate. Most of the offices that are onshore in Australia will have an email address. Many of the offshore offices, you have to use a special support form. It's an inquiry form that's online, and I'll make sure that's posted in the show notes so you can see that. You pick the office you want to communicate with, and away you go. Ask them if they need any further documents or information. You want to be nice, but you want to be persistent. That's also important. Now, you may notice that on the immigration website, if you look up the type of visa that you've applied for, it will say estimated processing time 12 to 18 months or 16 to 23 months. And sometimes early in that process, you may not want to be too frequent in your contacts. But certainly as you're approaching the estimated time frame, and definitely if you're after it, you're definitely going to want to go there and find out what's going on and see if there's something you can do in terms of providing them any extra information they need in order to make your process work. Tip number 2, make it easy for the department, that is the immigration department, to say yes. When you upload files, name them appropriately. Don't use gobbledygook like DSC 012345.jpg. That doesn't mean anything. Use every opportunity to make their jobs easier. So if you upload a picture, say what it is. Wedding reception, 15th of July, 2020, something like that. If you are going to do photos for partner visas, by the way, or anyone where you have to show a relationship, don't upload individual photos. You can arrange them into photo albums in Microsoft Word or some other program and include some captions in there. Who's in the picture? When was it taken? Where was it taken? That sort of thing. That makes the pictures much more effective in terms of demonstrating that you are in a genuine partner relationship. Don't overload your application with too many photos. People say how many photos to put in. Well, there are a lot of different answers to that question. It depends on how much time you have to cover. If you have a relationship of 2 years versus a relationship of 20 years, that can make a big difference. I generally say in terms of the number of photos, be very careful if you're exceeding, say, 30 or 40. And arrange them in a photo album so you can do, 2 or 3 or 4 to a page and add your captions. So don't overload them with photos. By the same token, don't overload them with text messages and other sorts of communications logs. If they want to see the contact while you're apart, that's great. Put it in, but sort of sample it over the life of the relationship. Don't send them 500 pages of text messages. Remember that case officers have a limited amount of time to assess your evidence and the files you put in. If you put in too much, you're just going to slow them down and they may not get to see all the evidence that you've put in. Also, if you put bank statements in, like joint bank statements or even individual bank statements, make sure that you highlight the transactions that are of a mutual benefit if you're doing a partner visa. Make sure you highlight the ones you want them to look at, rather than uploading pages and pages of bank statements and expecting them to weed out or somehow know what the relevant transactions were. So, for instance, if you purchased something for the lounge room, like a chair or a piece of furniture, or you paid for a trip together or things like that, point those out. You can highlight them with a colored highlighter and let them know what you're highlighting so you can help make their job a bit easier. Tip number 3, make sure all your forms are complete and submitted. Don't forget, on partner visas, you have to put Form 40SP in. That's the sponsorship by a partner. That's the one you can put in after you lodge the main partner visa application. Also, Form 80 is generally required for most, if not all, permanent visas. So don't wait for them to ask you for these. Put them in proactively. Finish them as soon as you can lodge, or do it right afterwards and put them in there. Also, if you have to do police certificates or health exams, which most visas have both of those, put them in right after you lodge. Don't wait for them to ask you for them. Now, if you don't want to get your visa processed fast and you want it to be processed slower, I suppose, then wait for them to ask you for health and police, because they'll generally ask you when they think there's less than 12 months left of processing, because police and health results expire after 12 months. Tip number 4, use the correct formats. Remember that if you're getting a police clearance certificate, whether it's from the AFP in Australia or an overseas police agency, the Department of Immigration has very specific versions of these that they require. Don't get the wrong version. It happens all the time. Check it out on the Immigration Department website. If you go to our offices and locations, look up the country that you need to get a police certificate for, and it'll tell you exactly where to get it and exactly what format you need. Make sure that any documents that need to be translated are already translated, in terms of making sure you have an English version. Now, generally, documents that have English captions or subtitles will work. So you see this often on birth certificates and police certificates, where they'll have the name of the thing, like the person's name in a foreign language, the word name, let's say, and then next to it, they'll have in English, NAME. So they sort of translate the titles of the different fields on the form. That's fine. The Immigration Department will generally accept that as long as all the foreign language on the form is translated. If you need to get it done yourself, make sure to use a NATI qualified translator. That's NAATI. If you are in a foreign country where there is no NATI translator, then you want to use a professional translator. Don't translate it yourself. Don't get a family member to do it or a friend. It won't work. The Immigration Department wants an official, professional level translator for all the documents. Let's keep going. Finally, tip number 5, respond to all inquiries quickly and completely. Create momentum. Don't get stuck in the 28-day pile. What's the 28-day pile? Well, when a case officer wants something from you, they might call you up. More often, they'll send you an email. If they call you up and say, "Can you send me this?" that means that they probably are very close to a decision. And rather than having to go through the hassle of sending you an email and then putting your application on hold for 28 days while they wait, or whatever the email says, and wait for you to respond, they're giving you a call because they might be one tiny step away from being able to grant your visa. So if you get a phone call, that generally means they're really, really close. If you get an email, it might be a Section 56 email where they ask you for more information. If you get one of those emails, respond as quickly as you can And don't forget, on the IME account, there'll be a button at the bottom. When you upload your files, it'll say, I have completely responded to the request or something along those lines. Click the button. You might also send them an email and let them know that you've responded and put all your files in. If you can create momentum by responding quickly to these kind of requests, you can really move your application along. Because don't forget, in many cases, case officers are as anxious to finish one as you are. The more applications they get finished, the more productive they are, and I'm sure there must be some sort of rewards for those folks if they're productive. So if you get a call or you get an email requesting documents, move quickly. Respond as quickly as you can. Well, those are the 5 tips I have for you today in terms of possibly getting your visa processed more quickly. Is it any sort of a guarantee that it will? No, because there just aren't any. There's just too many people at the immigration department in 2 different areas, and they're just doing things different ways. So there's no consistency, if you will, in terms of exactly things you can do to make your visa move through the system more quickly. But I can tell you in my experience that every one of these 5 tips that I've given you today has worked for people in the past. So if you want to try and influence things a bit and hopefully get your visa processing a little more quickly, you might check these out. Now let's jump over to some emails. And speaking of emails, if you have a question about Australian immigration, please email me. You can see the email address at the bottom of the screen there, askmrvisa@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to select your question and answer it on the show. So let's go to emails. Alrighty. So I have 3 emails for you this week, and these are questions I've received by email, and I'm happy to answer them. First one, it says, I have an AAT hearing coming up, but it's a phone hearing. Do you have any suggestions? Well, for those of you who don't know, the AAT, or the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, is a place you can go if you get a negative decision on a visa and you're onshore. Now, for some people that are offshore, there are ways to get your appeal to the tribunal in some cases. Consult your migration agent or immigration lawyer, and they can sort it out for you to see if your visa refusal or cancellation has an appeal right, or it's also called a merits review right or a review right. So assuming you have a right, you can put your visa refusal or cancellation or other negative decision into the AAT tribunal, and they will take another look at it. It can have some great results in many cases. Now, when you have a hearing, that's when your case finally comes up for a hearing at the tribunal, they will send you an invitation. And there are 3 types of hearings. There's a phone hearing where everybody's on the phone. There's a video hearing where it's using Zoom, or Microsoft Teams is typically what they use, similar to Zoom. And there's a face-to-face in-person hearing. So in answer to the first email question, I don't like phone hearings. I think phone hearings are problematic because all you are is a disembodied voice on the phone. You are not actually being seen by the tribunal member. And some people might say, well, why do you need to be seen before? I mean, isn't it all about, your arguments and all that? Well, sure it is. But when you give evidence, the evidence you give at a hearing, which, you're going to be judged on, and they're going to say, well, gee, does this seem like a person who's honest and sincere and genuine? I mean, those are the kind of judgments that everybody makes, consciously or not, when they watch someone else or listen to someone else talk. So you definitely want to be seen as a sincere, genuine person at your hearing. It's my view that a phone hearing is simply not good because all you are is a voice, a disembodied voice on the phone. They can't see you. They can't look at your face. They can't look at your body language and see if you're fidgeting around or somehow all nervous and weirded out. Or maybe they see that you are a genuine, direct person who appears to be speaking from the heart. So my suggestion to the person who emailed that in this week is don't settle for a phone hearing. Put in a request for a video hearing or a face-to-face if we're done with all this COVID lockdown and they're finally going to be offering face-to-face hearings, which we hope they'll be getting back to soon. So there is, and I would certainly make the argument that you wish to be seen and heard, and you believe that, in order to properly assess your evidence, that, they need to see the whole package, not just hear a voice on the phone. Now, there's some federal court cases that have pointed out the benefits of face-to-face hearings, and I would say that includes video hearings. If you need any help with that sort of thing, get in touch with me and we'll be happy to help you out. All right, next email. Dear Mark, I applied for a partner visa onshore, but it was refused. I'm holding a bridging visa A. Do I need to apply for a new bridging visa if I want to appeal my refusal to the AAT tribunal? Well, the good news is no, you don't. If you are onshore and you make a tribunal application, and make sure you make that within the correct number of days and meet all the requirements there, they're very strict about that. But if you make a valid tribunal application, you're onshore, whatever bridging visa you have will generally continue automatically. The one exception to this is if you happen to hold a bridging visa E in certain configurations. Again, any questions on that, get in touch with us. But generally speaking, if you hold a bridging visa A or a C, which is the things we see the most often with these things, they will automatically, the bridging visa will automatically be extended if you file a valid tribunal application. Now, remember that you can always go to Vivo, that's VEVO, and check your current visa status. And that's a good thing to do just to make sure that they automatically extended your visa if you go to the AAT. Now, after the AAT, if you lodge in federal court, well, that's different. You do have to get a separate and a new bridging visa for court. But for the AAT, it should continue the same one that you have and the one that you were holding while you were waiting for your visa application results from the department. And finally, we have one more question. Dear Mark, I applied for an 820 partner visa. That's the onshore version of a partner visa. And now I'm in Schedule 3 hell. What is this thing? And how can I get past it? Well, we're going to do another show specifically about Schedule 3. But in a nutshell, it's a special part of the law that says that if you're onshore, and if you lodge an onshore partner visa application, and you're only holding a bridging visa, you're not holding any other kind of visa, or you're holding no visa at all, that will enliven the Schedule 3 criteria. And that creates a whole different set of requirements that you must meet, or the visa will get refused on Schedule 3 grounds. It doesn't matter if you have a genuine relationship. They will assess this Schedule 3 thing before they even look at your relationship evidence. So you need to be very careful if you're applying for an onshore partner visa and you don't hold a substantive visa, that's a non-bridging visa, at the time you lodge. If you're only holding a bridging visa, then you may well be enlivening Schedule 3, and you need to get some advice on that because that can introduce some very difficult requirements to meet for your visa. Well, that's it for this episode of Ask Mr. Visa. I'm Mark Northam. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, comments, hints, or suggestions, please let us know, and I hope to see you on the next show. Thanks for watching.